So I finally make the final decision there with like a quarter mile to run through and do a half marathon. I think I posted around mile 11 on Instagram. This is just not my day. And listen, it was an extremely frustrating experience. When you train for a distance, let me talk negative and then I'll get into the positive. But when you train for a distance and you have to say, I can't make it, that's hard. It's very difficult. It's very emotionally frustrating because when you put yourself out there like I can do anything. And I'll tell you what really bothered me is part of this race for me was to prove that I could drive all night and run a marathon. That was kind of like in my gut. It wasn't about the time. It was about this process of driving to it, this whole thing of driving overnight, hitting this marathon, driving home, this whole idea. Because having been a third shifter, I felt like I had an advantage to be able to do that, and I wasn't able to do that. And so that really bothered me. It bothered me a lot. And so from a negative side of things, it was very frustrating to do this, but I'm also thankful, like I talked about earlier, the way this played out with my half marathon being canceled. If the half marathon had not been canceled, I would have already completed a half marathon in Ohio, and running a half marathon here wouldn't have made sense. It wouldn't have made sense because I would have already had the goal. This whole thing that I'm doing, why I was even in Ohio at all, was to get a half marathon, full marathon, and a 5 or 10K in every state. Well, if I had already had a half marathon, getting another half marathon would not have done anything for me. This would have been kind of a wasted race in terms of that goal. And then it turns that whole drive and planning and all that into a wasted time. So I'm super thankful that first race got canceled, that they allowed me in this race to change the distance. Like, not only did they let me change it before the race, which I'm sure they would have, but they let me change it midway through the race, because they could have said, no, you have to, like, if you don't do the one you signed up for, then you don't get the medal. And that would have also been a waste of race in terms of like what I'm trying to do with my bigger goal. But instead, I was able to walk away with my head held at least half high with a completed race in Ohio, which is a half marathon. But lingering in the back of my mind is this reality that, all things considered, this was basically a did not finish. You set out to run a 26-mile race and you only ran 13. That's a DNF. On paper, it's a terrible half marathon. So, but we'll take it, trying to see the positives, but the negatives are definitely not lost on me in terms of having to make that switch. I'm just still very frustrated. I woke up today. It's funny. Before I get into the trip home, it's funny because mentally you tell yourself that it's okay, right? Like, hey, you did the smart thing. You didn't hurt yourself. A lot of people got online and said, hey, that's tough, but you'll live to fight another day and all that, those things. Those, and I love those compliments. I would do the same thing if I saw somebody was setting out to do a goal and they didn't make it. However, there is a reality that you still have to live with the fact that you quit. I quit halfway, and you do this in training, and it's like, there've been times where I called my son and he couldn't get me, and I'm like, I'm glad that I didn't quit, And you want to be this person who never gives up, never quits. But sometimes you got no choice. And, I look at this one and it wears on me a little bit because I did have a choice. I could have turned around and pushed through it, and I could have written a different story. And one of the things that bothers me a little bit is I went back and I looked at the stats later. I would have been, if I had just completed the marathon, I would have been the only person in my age bracket to complete it. And I would have had my first Not that this matters, but it would have been interesting to be able to say, oh, I was first in my age group, right? Only 13 people completed the marathon that day, and I would have been number 14. So don't know what my time would have been. Who knows? Maybe, there's two ways that goes, right? I make the decision to turn around and do the other 13 miles because that's what I said I would do. And I run it, walk it, whatever, and it ends up being 5 hours and 15 minutes. And there's a story there. There's a reality where I do I get to mile 18, the turnaround, and I have to DNF because I just can't finish. There's a story there. There's also the reality that maybe I get injured and the rest of the races this year are over with. And so these are the things that you wrestle with. And I am frustrated because I think mentally I lost this race before physically I lost it. But I also have to look at the positives, and you do have to make wise decisions. And so the reality is, if this had happened in any other marathon up to this point, that's my first DNF. And I have to look at myself and go, what did I do wrong? If you look at the article I wrote last week about this, it gnawed at me that my training might not have been the right choice. Like, I thought I made the right choice training. I did clearly made the wrong choice training. But there are other factors involved too. I'll talk about those when I get to the meat of it. But what I want to say, because I wanted to spend some time on this negative aspect, because on social media, and even I did it myself, right? Like, I shared a post where I was frustrated that I had to call it halfway. I kind of feel bad about the way I took the medal, because I was very confused when I got to the end, because they knew who I was, probably based on my bib number. I'm an idiot, so that's on me. But they looked at me and they said, when they're handing out the medals, they go, "Great job, Jeremy," and they handed me the medal, and I'm like, do I have the right medal? Because I didn't know if they had different medals for marathon. There was no way I was taking a full marathon medal for a half. I just wasn't doing that. But it was a general medal with all of them, so everyone got the same medal that day. But I also thought that they might have been waiting for me to confirm my switch from half to full. And so so that's what I'm waiting for. So the guy handing me the water and the medal goes to hand me a rag, which I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. I was confused. So I go, oh, no, I'm good. I'm good on the rag. And my mind is, make sure you tell them to switch that, because I just want to make sure the stats line up and stuff. Make sure everyone's on the same page. And I get that all sorted out, and I realize that I'm holding the medal. I didn't even put the medal on. And I get in the car because we're getting ready to leave, and I toss it in the back. And I wasn't upset. Like, I was glad that I finished the half marathon. I was upset with the leg situation and the mental aspect of what was going on. But the race was phenomenal. But I kind of felt like I was giving off like a, man, this sucks vibe, which it was one of the best races. I might do this one again. I have two plans in play right now that I'm thinking about. Part of me wants to go back and run this exact marathon next year and just make it like a focal point of next year, because this was fun. Like, this was a good race. And I really think I could crush this race if I had the right training ahead of time. Like, this is the flattest track I've been on. I mean, Presque Isle in Erie, the Erie Marathon was flat, but this was flat, back, forth. I mean, a good marathoner would go out there and crush that track. So, but I did feel kind of bad that when I got done, I was kind of like, I felt like I was rude. I didn't mean to be, but I was frustrated with myself too, and I just wanted to get out of there and get on the road at that point. But I did want to spend some time on that negative aspect, because on social media, people immediately, myself included, jumped onto it and said, hey, you made the right decision. Hey, a finish is a finish. It's all true. But I do think we need to sit in those negative aspects and at least admit the fact that that was not a successful process, because you can't learn from it if you just go, oh, well, I did best, whatever. And I mean, I was mentally in a dark place around mile 10, 11. Like, I was literally ready to give up racing, running, all of it. I was like, okay, this whole running thing maybe was just a waste. And this happens to me when I'm doing podcasts. It happens to me when I'm doing interviews with podcasts, when I'm running, when I'm doing these races. I do have to remind myself that I'm not an elite runner. Like, I am Uncredible. And I think that life continues to remind me of that, and that's okay. So, I mean, there's certain levels to this game, and I'm down here, and I gotta be reminded of that and stay humble. So, there is some positive to sitting in that negative aspect of this and recognizing this was a failure and then going back and evaluating why things fell apart. So before I get to the actual meat of what I took away from this, the next, probably the worst part of this whole trip, you'd think that the race itself would have been the worst part, and calling it quits halfway, I actually was feeling pretty good. I was disappointed in myself for quitting. I call it quitting. Some people might say, oh no, you just made a wise decision to call it halfway. I was kind of disappointed in myself, but on the flip side, I was happy because I did not want to, I can tell you, I did the math and I was like 17 miles of walking. I remember when I did the math in Buffalo and I said, oof, man, this is happening at mile 14. That's 12 miles of walking. And I remember telling myself, I can walk 12 miles. And I had a full mindset switch. I was like, I'm just going to take in the city. I was like, I can do this. But there was no option. I had already passed the half marathon. I had to finish this thing. There was not finishing wasn't an option. It was such a relief to be able to cut this thing halfway, because when I did the math on the 17, I was like, I don't think I can walk. Because here's the thing. In Buffalo, there was a lot going on around me. Like, people were constantly passing me. The water stations were full of people. In my head, I was like, I don't know that I can walk 2 to 3 miles without seeing another person and just stroll for the next 17 miles. I just didn't see me doing it where my mental headspace was. So I was very relieved. So like I said, you would think that the quitting part of the half marathon would have been the worst part. The worst part was this drive home that just seemed like it would never end. And my son was exhausted. He was happy to head home early too. But man, he was... So my car does not have air conditioning, and that's fine. We don't need it. I work nights, so 90% of the time I'm driving it is early morning or late evening. So it's never really a need for air conditioning with this thing. So this was the first time I've had to ride in my car in the heat, and man, we left the race ended at like 9. You see 8:58 is when I crossed the finish line, checked some boxes, hit the bathroom, change. I had to hit the bathroom like 3. All the water I drank came out immediately, like when the race was over. And so we stopped like 2 or 3 times. I grabbed Taco Bell. We get out on the road, and it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at this point, and it is hot. Like it is hot. And this drive home was absolutely grueling. I mean, I had to, like I said, I had to take multiple bathroom stops, and by the end of this drive home, my son and I were absolutely, completely, we say cooked. We were beat. In fact, my son took a nap, which he never does. He's like me. He goes. And we were both up since 10 o'clock the night before. Well, I was up since 10 o'clock the night before. He was up since midnight and only on 4 hours of sleep. And we were both just completely done. So really, I mean, we had a really great drive down, a mediocre experience in the run. Like, because of my performance, not because of the run itself. Listen, let me just say, this is the funnest race I've been to. Funnest? Is that a word? Most fun race I've been to, and I would love to do this again. And that's why I'm looking at I have a wall where I put Ohio. I could find another marathon to chase this year or early next year and go get that marathon, but part of me thinks it would be fun to crush this thing again next year and plan for it that way. Maybe skip the Buffalo, like the May marathon, and just focus on halfway. We'll see. We'll see how the schedule plays out and what states I chase next year. But I'm telling you, this was fun. This course was fun. It was a beautiful course, quiet, peaceful. I mean, listen, if you're looking to run Boston and cities, this would be boring to you. But this was a rural. If you want to go out and run a marathon, like a training run alone, and just embrace the quiet. This marathon would have been phenomenal if my performance hadn't sucked. And then it ended with this horrible drive home. So anyway, I want to get to the point. And there's a lot of, when I look at life through an Uncredible lens, there was a lot of takeaways from this race. And the first one was maybe 2 months isn't enough time to recover from a marathon. And I say they, people online, whatever, that you shouldn't do but 2 or 3 a year marathons. In a little over a year's time, I'm trying to crank out 4. Maybe they're right. I'm not sure. I don't know if this result was because I wasn't fully recovered from the Buffalo Marathon. It's possible. I did not ease very well into the training block, and I did have soreness and pain throughout it. I felt like I did some really good long runs that I kept light so that I didn't hurt myself. And like I said, when I did this last week of taper, I felt the best I felt going into a race. So, I look at it and I go, I don't think there was residual, but there might have been. The failure point's the same. I think back to my first marathon where my quad seized up there. I had no pain, like no leg pain that I can recall at my winter half marathon. But that was a solid 4 months later. So in Buffalo, I highly doubt, for example, that the quad issue I had in May was residual from September of the previous year. However, I do have to think that there was some weakness in that leg, considering the fact that I came up short. I came up with this quad hamstring thing. This was more of a hamstring pain, but I will tell you that now this morning it's all in the quad. Like the hamstring was what was tugging me yesterday. Like that's where the pain was showing up. But this morning when I woke up, it's all in my quad. Like it's all in that same inner quad area. So might be adductor. I don't know. I'm not. The point being, maybe 2 months was not enough time for recovery, or maybe I should have taken it a little easier initially. Maybe not so many long runs and just let my body heal. We're going to do that for this next one. Also, and I think the more I think about it, I think this might be more of a factor than I realize, and I'll find out this upcoming weekend with this 10K if this is true. Maybe driving 4.5 hours and hopping on the start line of a marathon is not the best idea. It's going to throw a monkey wrench into my plans for going state by state, because that one of the things I thought I could do was drive all night and run a marathon. I really thought I could do that, and maybe I can, but so far I've proven that I can't. So complete that. So I'm going to run the Miami 10K, the little Miami 10K that I'm doing in Ohio is about an hour later in terms of drive. It's almost an identical drive. It's just a little further next Sunday, and I'm curious to see how my legs feel by the end of that drive, because I'm telling you, my legs did not feel stiff or tight. But from what I'm reading, sitting in a car for 4.5 hours and then getting out and trying to run might have been a factor. I don't know, but it's something I need to consider if I'm going to keep traveling. My plan was to drive to the Marine Corps Marathon and then run it that morning. May have to abandon that strategy. Marine Corps has a 5.5 hour time limit. I do not plan to DNF that at all. That will hurt. But I've probably the most important. So those are like my two obvious takeaways. Maybe I went after this too quickly. Maybe the drive hurt me. More importantly, and I think this is where my focus is going to be for the next 3 months, is I think I need more balance in my training.
No quit. Building their wall. While they talk about us. Educated. Experienced. Still not credible. So we embraced it. Now we're uncredible.